Welcome back to Just Recaps. Today I am going to explain the comedy horror romance titled Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. The first scene of the movie, which is set in an alternate early 1800s England, shows Colonel Darcy visiting a wealthy family's home to look into the appearance of a zombie. He enters the house, sits down with the family, and then removes a tiny vial containing a specific strain of flies that are capable of detecting the undead. The patriarch of the house receives the flies, and his eyes begin to flush. The man is stabbed in the throat by Darcy, who then decapitates him after breaking a glass. One of the young girls in the house is terrified and runs upstairs. When she is found, she has also become a zombie and starts to attack. Mr. Bennet's narration of the zombie outbreak's beginning, which is depicted as a pop-up book, is heard over the opening credits. When the Black Plague struck London, zombies started to emerge. The zombies were kept in an area known as the In-Between, separated from London by a wall. According to legend, the four horsemen are prepared to ascend from hell and bring about the end of the world. After being sent to China, their father trained the five Bennet sisters, Elizabeth, Jane, Kitty, Lydia, and Mary, in martial arts and weaponry. Mrs. Bennet desires that her daughters find wealthy husbands. It turns out that the Bingley family has recently moved in and is hosting a party. Mrs. Bennet is hoping that the young and attractive Mr. Bingley will seduce one of her daughters. Lydia makes a snide remark about Elizabeth not being able to attract men in response to Elizabeth's declaration that she doesn't want to look for a husband. She then drives Lydia from the room. The Bennets go to the dance. Bingley looks at Jane right away. Elizabeth overhears Darcy, who is present, observing Elizabeth and commenting that he finds her unattractive. She encounters Mrs. Featherstone, Hermione Corfield, a woman she knew, who is a zombie, as she sobs her way outside. Just as Mrs. Featherstone is about to tell Elizabeth something, Darcy blows her head off. The Bennet sisters then take action after being attacked by a horde of zombies. When Darcy sees Elizabeth in battle, he falls in love with her right away as they kill every zombie in their path. On a rainy day, Jane is by herself outside when she comes across a zombie. After killing it, she discovers a zombie mother and her child. When Jane hesitates, the zombie attacks her. She is sequestered in her room because it's possible she was bitten there. Darcy brings the flies to their house in an attempt to find a zombie, but Elizabeth catches each fly in her hand and gives it back to Darcy. The sisters go to another ball for the Bingleys after Jane has recovered. Elizabeth meets Mr. George Wickham, a soldier she initially finds charming and courteous. He admits to Elizabeth that he has a history with Darcy and doesn't want to challenge him any further. Darcy joins Elizabeth in battling the zombies after Bingley is hurt by another group of zombies that attack the party. Parson Collins, who wants to marry one of the sisters, pays the Bennets a visit. Although he is informed that Jane is with Bingley, he immediately sets his eyes on her. Later, he makes an attempt to date Elizabeth but demands that she give up her life as a warrior, which she vehemently rejects, even for a man. Later, Mr. Collins makes the choice to settle with Charlotte, a friend of Elizabeth. Elizabeth and Darcy meet with Lady Catherine de Bourgh, a notorious zombie killer with considerable power who is also Darcy's aunt. Lady Catherine wants Darcy to marry her daughter Anne, but her skills are also needed to fend off the zombies. Lady Catherine has several scars on her body that she carefully conceals, as well as a black eye patch covering her left eye. In the In-Between, a region outside of Walden, London but inside a royal moat, Elizabeth journeys with Mr. Wickham to a church populated by zombies who eat pig brains to prevent themselves from turning completely savage. Elizabeth is invited to assist Mr. Wickham in assisting the zombies. Additionally, he suggests that she flee with him, but she is still unsure. Elizabeth learns at home that Darcy persuaded the Bingleys to leave. Elizabeth expresses her outrage at Darcy's actions and challenges him to a duel when he approaches her with his own proposal. Elizabeth prevails, and Darcy walks away. In a letter to Elizabeth, Mr. Darcy expresses regret for his actions and explains that he had to break up Jane and Mr. Bingley's engagement because he heard Mrs. Bennet mention intoxication that Jane only wanted to marry Mr. Bingley for his wealth. Mr. Darcy also mentions Mr. Wickham's attempt to elope with his sister, who was then 15 years old, in exchange for her fortune. According to Mr. Darcy's letter, zombies have taken control of the walled city of London and he is fighting them there. Elizabeth is confronted by Lady Catherine regarding rumors about her and Mr. Darcy. Lady Catherine claims that Mr. Darcy has been intended to marry her ill daughter, and, since they were young, Elizabeth has refused to fight Lady Catherine, so when Elizabeth denies it, Lady Catherine starts a fight between Elizabeth and Wilhelm in her place. Wilhelm attacks Elizabeth, but she slashes his face and repels him, pushing him under a wall of bricks where he is crushed to death. Elizabeth is then surrounded by Lady Catherine and her bodyguard Wilhelm. Then Catherine says she's unsure whether to admire Elizabeth's bravery as a woman or her skill as a warrior while holding her sword at Elizabeth's neck. She walks away from Elizabeth. After that, Lady Catherine makes the decision to take Elizabeth's family to her estate so they can be safe from approaching zombies. Later, Elizabeth learns that Lydia, her younger sister, was taken by Mr. Wickham, and she makes the decision to go and save her. The royal army is blocking the final bridge out of the city, so Elizabeth and Jane travel to the canal on the outskirts of London. After leaving Jane in the army camp, Elizabeth rides her horse across the bridge by herself while hiding it in search of her sister. The zombies are currently moving toward London. Then, Mr. Darcy runs into Mr. Wickham at the old church and saves Lydia from the cellar. Mr. Darcy and Lydia flee the cellar when a horde of zombies storms it. These zombies had been eating pig brains but had been transformed into humans when Mr. Darcy switched them out. In the in-between, Elizabeth reunites with Darcy and assists him in fighting the undead. When Darcy runs into Wickham once more, he fights him until he impales him and discovers a bite mark on his chest, proving Wickham was actually dead the entire time. Elizabeth rides in and chops off Wickham's right arm and knocks him out before he can kill Darcy. While other Londoners blow up the bridge to keep the zombies away, Darcy rides with Elizabeth across it. In the explosion, Darcy sustains damage and loses consciousness. Elizabeth professes her love for him while sobbing. Darcy locates Elizabeth and informs her that he overheard what she said on the bridge after he is recovered. After their first kiss, they decide to get married. Parson Collins officiates the wedding of Elizabeth and Darcy, Bingley and Jane, and themselves. Everyone attends, including Lydia, Kitty, Mary, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, as well as Lady Catherine and Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. The two couples part ways, intending to lead fulfilling lives together. Up until the mid-credits scene, when everyone notices something beyond the church gates. A massive army of zombies and the 4 zombie horsemen are approaching them in a warlike manner under the command of the now unarmed Wickham. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again on my channel for new recaps.